Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on native advertising. I'm Chad Hill and I'm joined by Adam Stetzer.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks, Chad. Great to be here. Excited to hear about native advertising. I'm up here in the sunny Rochester office on this wonderful spring day. I'm joined by a big chunk of Hub Shout. Say hello. Hello. And we're excited to be here today, Chad.
Let's jump right in. We wanted to share with you the results of a survey we did, and we thought we'd set it up by walking through native advertising because it is a hot topic and one that is a little difficult to understand, but we thought we'd use today to educate everyone and share with you some of the insights that we found in a recent survey that we did in a related ebook. So the first question is, what is native advertising? I'm just going to read a couple quotes that we thought were very constructive and useful. It's a form of paid media where the ad experience follows the natural form and function of the user experience in which it's placed. Another quote here is, in short, native advertising is a promoted listing that takes the form of the publisher's content. And we have an example here from BuzzFeed on the right, and things are a little small there, but I'm sure maybe people wouldn't admit it, but a lot of us have been on BuzzFeed. And you can see there that, for example, that second one is promoted by Skittles, and you'd probably have to believe that possibly that first one had some relationship to McDonald's. So let's, again, hit a couple things. So what is native advertising? It's in the stream. It's useful content. It can teach the consumer. It encourages engagement, and it doesn't sacrifice value. We've got a great little slide here that our design team put together that sort of can show you some examples. So you might have an in-feed unit, and so this little icon to the right shows that the dark blue would be a true editorial piece, and then the beige with the dollar sign would be a native ad. So you would, reading down that in-stream set of content, not really know that the third one was a paid one because the first and the second and the fourth were editorial. It also can include things like paid search. So actually, a lot of people consider, and again, this is something that people could argue are discussing, and it is a little tricky sometimes to know exactly, that people are still defining native advertising, but a lot of people would say that Google AdWords is, because again, it's in-stream, it's not terribly different, doesn't look different than the other links that are on a Google search results page. It might be a recommendation widget. So down at the bottom, this is one we'll talk about more, but Outbrain has this model where they have paid units that show things from around the web, but they also include related content that's from that website. So those are more algorithmically placed, but they're all editorial. You might have something on the right like a promoted listing. So again, this is an example you might see on Yelp, Amazon, or Google, where there are shopping results, and many of those may be either, again, organic or somehow editorial placed, but there will be a paid or in-stream ad, native ad there as well. And then you can see here again on the right another example where maybe there's two different types of content, but again, the native ad is sort of hidden or mixed in with other editorial pieces of content. And then finally, a custom example where we now, for many of us using things like Pandora and Flipboard, a lot of the content that's getting mixed in, there are direct ads, but sometimes there's actually content that's getting mixed in terms of what music we're even listening to.
Hey, Chad, so a natural question that might arise here, and I think it's a little confusing that AdWords maybe is listed on there, so I'd be interested in your thoughts, but is native advertising more about the format or about where the ad takes you? Because I could see people being confused, particularly as they see Google AdWords listed as possibly native advertising.
Yeah, and again, I think different people would say it is or it isn't. I think most of our discussion today is going to be focused on the truer examples of a piece of content that you're reading either on or away from the website. But again, a link in AdWords, I think again some people would say an ad spot could be in some way native advertising because if you go back to those early examples, it takes the form of the other content on the website. And with Google, especially more and more, they really have made their ads look exactly like their organic search results. But I wouldn't want to make this about AdWords and whether it's native advertising or not. because there's a lot of better examples that we're going to be talking about today. So here's a couple examples, and again, the ones that we'll focus on and look at here are things like on the right-hand side, which on entrepreneur.com you're starting to see that content is being presented by Intuit. So it doesn't really say who wrote it. It doesn't really say whether it's advertising an Intuit product, but Intuit's on there. It is being disclosed that this content is in some way sponsored by, and actually right there, there's an error that says sponsor provided content. So this content is written by Intuit. The examples on the top here, and many of us have seen these on things like Twitter and Foursquare, where they're now promoted tweets. There are promoted posts on Facebook, and there are in Foursquare also promoted posts there. And then the widget that I was mentioning here that you see in awful lot of places these days is the Outbrain widget, which is taking, on the left-hand side, shows you these links to content from around the web, but then there's also content on CNN. So again, this ad unit is promoting content on CNN, but also promoting content from other places as well.
Hey, Chad, these are interesting. It almost seems like each one, they've tried to make the disclosure probably as small as is possible without feeling unethical that they didn't disclose it. And we've seen that change over the years. Is that your opinion that the definition of how much disclosure you need to have has gone up or has gone down with this introduction of native advertising?
That's a great question. I think it varies, and I know that from some of the partners that we have who actually have, are affiliated with print publications, we know there's just a raging debate internally about this line and what you have to disclose to properly state that this is an ad, a native ad versus editorial content. So I think that every website, there's ones pushing limits, and I've read many places and have visited entrepreneur.com. I think they're pushing the limits probably because they're looking at ways to monetize their website, but they probably are pushing the limits in a lot of the other publications.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, like some of them have taken traditional ads and changed how they're writing the copy and bending it more to a headline, versus others are taking more traditional content and now making it sponsored more like an ad. So, and I'm sure you're going to cover this, I think that's pretty exciting for anyone in the content marketing space, because we're essentially seeing some mergers of things that were before now very distinct.
Right, and there's a when people think about native advertising, there's a couple different flavors of it. And again, going back to the definition, we're using a pretty broad definition, but there are some people who believe that the examples here that we see with the from around the web example, where it's actually leading you away from the website you're on. So this is a widget on CNN leading you to Next Advisor Daily and the Technologist. So a lot of people would say that this is more content discovery because it's actually not embedded on the CNN website. Whereas if, for example, the entrepreneur example is true native advertising, because this content, other than the small disclosure here and a small disclosure here, is exactly the same as all the other editorial content on entrepreneur.com. So if you really want to split hairs, there are camps out there who would say this is truly native advertising, this is content discovery. So if you can't see my cursor, I'm saying this, I'm talking about the entrepreneur.com example is true native advertising, and then something like with Outbrain is more content discovery. But I think in general, and Adam, we've discussed this several times, that in general, to avoid confusion, people are just sort of bucketing these together and calling this all native advertising, because at the end of the day, the ad takes the same format as a regular story. It's just being provided, and it's sitting in the same place as other stories on that website. So even though technically when you lead yourself away from the content, the widget here on CNN.com, people are lumping that together into native ads.
Yeah, that's interesting, Jen, and it does help. And I think you're right. I think as this market evolves, those discussions will get settled down, and we'll probably see even new terms introduced. But that's interesting.
Yeah. So in terms of the growth of native advertising, we found a couple of different surveys. One of these we've talked about in a brown bag, but the FTC has said that 73% of online publishers are currently supporting and offering native advertising platforms, and that 17% are considering adopting its format. So clearly this is huge. This is 90% of the market is very close to having native advertising, and this survey itself is probably a couple months old, so we may be even higher up on the curve here towards total penetration. BIA Kelsey said that native advertising would reach $2.3 billion in 2013 after being at $1.6 billion in 2012, and was projecting that by 2017 that it'll be at $4.6 billion. So this is definitely a growing area, and it makes sense because when we think about content marketing and all this effort people are putting into content for the audience, for the potential SEO value of it, again, everyone's looking for ways to get more mileage out of that content, and native advertising is a perfect example. Again, whether it's on a website like entrepreneur.com or whether you're using something like Outbrain just to better promote your content to people who might be interested in it. So this leads into our survey in the ebook that we've put together. Really, we wanted to look at this area of native advertising and get a sense of what the end customer, the reader of these publications, thinks of native advertising and how they might be interacting with it today. So we put together a survey, and we really wanted to go in and ask, are internet users familiar with native advertising? What types of things are they inclined to click on? What's the relationship with advertisers? Is it helpful or not helpful? And do they trust it? Is native advertising content trustworthy? And so we set out to get some of those questions answered, and we want to walk through the results here. So in terms of answering the question of how effective is native advertising, very interesting results here. So here, have you read a sponsored or promoted article on the internet? 67.5% said yes, and 80% of people said that they had noticed suggested links at the bottom of articles that are sponsored. Another interesting response here was that, are you more willing to click on sponsored articles or banner ads? And this is really a powerful stat for, I think, where native advertising is going to go. But only 32% said that they would click on banner ads. Most said they would prefer. 67.2% they would click on a sponsored article before they did a banner ad. And this is really what I think a lot of publishers have been trying to figure out, right? We know that all the publishers, the print publishers, went online because people stopped getting papers delivered and stopped getting magazines. The problem is that the amount they could sell their advertising for online was so much less than what they used to be able to get for print. And that was because people could tune out the banner ads. They didn't, the formats were, people didn't pay attention to them. So what all the publishers see here, they see this stat, they know this stat, and they're saying, wow, people are more willing to interact with the sponsored content, which means we'll be able to sell the ads to advertisers for more money. And people like Outbrain are out building the ad networks that people can plug in, advertisers can plug into in order to get the reach through these publishers. So then a little bit more information about what were the most effective forms of native advertising. So again, we cast a pretty wide net here on what could be a native ad, but the response that came back were that the overwhelming majority of people found that links to suggested content at the end of the article were, on the left-hand side, the most helpful, and also in terms of having the most impact on the decision. So I guess what people are saying there, without reading too much into that because the facts are pretty clear there, is that, yeah, something inline, in-stream is both more helpful because it's relevant and also has potentially a bigger impact on a purchase decision. At the bottom here, another interesting stat is that which are you more likely to click on? And so this gets back to like the Outbrain widget, which part of those links led away from the website and part stayed on the website. So clearly overall, people had a preference when you looked at all three of these individual categories, independently. People want to stay. Actually, the total of both either are equally willing to click on a link from around the web as one that was as either one was actually over half the total people there. So again, let me phrase that better. So really what I'm saying there is that over half of the people said they don't care. They would either equally click on one that stays on the website versus one that leaves, versus specifically clicking on one to go to another website. In terms of the impact on the consumer relationship, I thought this is a really good one on the left. Do you find more, less, or equal value in a sponsored article versus a non-sponsored article? And again, when you look at that in the middle, people just aren't really making a real considered, they're not evaluating and saying that one is better than the other. They're just looking at them in the same way. So that's good from an advertising standpoint, because it means that people aren't actively trying to avoid my content. If I do choose to use one of the native ad platforms, they're willing to click. And then on the right-hand side, what type of impact, if any at all, does sponsored content have on your experience while you were visiting a website? And again, you've got that 33.4% said it positively impacts, and 52% doesn't have an impact, and only 14.3% said it negatively impacts.
Yeah, this is interesting, Jack, because it says that the consumer is fairly agnostic on this. They're just saying, show me something of value that matches what I'm looking for, and I don't really care if someone paid for it or not. I think that's fairly consistent with some of the things we've seen in other research on people who click on AdWords ads, which everybody, when surveyed, says I never do that. I never click on those ads, but of course we all know everybody clicks on those ads when they find them useful, and then when they can remember that they did, because sometimes they don't even remember they did, they say they're very useful. So it seems like similar findings here in the native advertising world.
Right. And I think a lot of times there's the educated crowd that we're all in, because we're in this industry and we look at things a little bit more skeptically. But the reality is that we all study this all day long, and we know what all this stuff is and how it works from both the user interface side and then the back office side of how you can actually get your ads out there. But the vast majority of the people out there, of your potential prospects, don't know. And I think that's what this is sort of showing us, is that they don't care, as you said, they're agnostic. Okay, in terms of the impact on the consumer relationship, because there's a lot of people, again, who say that, well, ads make me not like a brand because I feel like they're pushing their message on me. But the message that came back here was that, how do you feel about sponsored content? Check all that apply. And we had 45% of the respondents say it's a form of advertising that can be more relevant to me. That's great. The next biggest one that came back was it's a form of advertising that can help me learn more about the brand's industry. So then the two that were more negative got a much lower response. It's a form of advertising that can build. Actually, I don't agree with any of the above statements. Was fairly low, and then the one that also got a fairly low response was it's a form of advertising that can build trust between the brand and I. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what options exist today if this is a path that would make sense for one of your clients. And again, to me, the clients where this makes a lot of sense are clients who are investing a lot of money today in quality content, and that's many of the people on the phone today. Maybe some of you are still trying to convince your clients to get on the bandwagon, but people who are investing in quality content, there are multiple. You want to monetize that in as many ways as possible. So clearly, it being on your website is great. It improves the chances. It gives you linkable assets for other marketing opportunities and public relations opportunities. But there's also this advertising side. So engines like Outbrain are a great way to try to just get more audience on your website. So we just here have an example of a couple campaigns that we're running, and we you feed into Outbrain these different URLs you want to promote, and you can work on different titles to try to come up with a very clickable title through their platform. And you can see here that we had, in some cases, about 500,000 impressions, 179 clicks on one of the stories. The next one down has 177,000 impressions and 147 clicks. So the click-through rate is similar to what you're going to find with display advertising. So for those of you looking at that number and saying, well, gosh, that's a 0.04% click-through rate, that's not great. Those are similar to the types of banner click-through rates that you're going to see. But the cost per click, and it's not on this particular chart we have here, but the cost per click is relatively inexpensive, and it is a cost per click model. It's not an impression model, which some banner advertising still is, but most is now also CPC. But it's a CPC model, and all you're doing to feed into this is you're just writing good content, which the system is, Outbrain is trying to match to other relevant content across the web and get you there as a related story. So on the right-hand side, we have some examples of the types of publications where your stories would show up. So we were getting stories on NBC News, Fox News, CNN, PC Mag, the Austin Statesman. So these are big brand publications where you're able to get your content promoted. And again, it's just another way of diversifying your marketing, so you're not too dependent on Google AdWords. If that's all you're doing, here's another channel for you to go after. And especially if you're developing great content, it sort of feeds itself, because you're able to take the content you're already building and just get better distribution of it. And then we also included back in here too those results from earlier in our study, which showed that those links at the end of articles were both people found the most helpful and also had the biggest impact on a purchase decision. So tying this back to services that you could take advantage of with us today, or by doing it yourself, one would be, we'll come back to PPC with Google AdWords, but one would be Buzz Graphics. So Buzz Graphics are great because you get a nice, well-researched article with an infographic, and then, again, you can promote that. In fact, our Buzz Graphic product, every one that we do, our wholesale price is $3.99. That always includes $100 of Outbrain promotion. So right off the bat, we're taking that product and we're just going to spend $100 of that on Outbrain to get a little bit of a kick of traffic to your website. And some of the results I showed in the last slide were from Buzz Graphic campaigns that we're running for clients today. Another one is articles. So on-site blogging is another great way. If you're feeding in good topic keywords and our team can help you build them, then we can write interesting articles, get posted on your client's website, and again, those can become part of your native ad content that gets plugged into things like Outbrain or other content discovery platforms. And then the final one here is PPC with Google AdWords. So again, we actually talked about this not too long ago, but there's a dynamic search ad product that Google has where you can actually set Google and say, help promote my content, and it will crawl all of your content and automatically build paid search ads. So it's not for everyone, but someone who's really looking to get a little bit more mileage out of the content they've created, that's another great option for them. And just so you guys know, in case you're wondering, will they enter this sort of Outbrain content discovery area? And my understanding is that they will be. You have to sort of imagine they have to be, because they're the ones out there telling everyone to create all this great content. And if they don't have a tool to help people promote it, then they're going to get left in the dust as Outbrain continues to gain market share. Now, one thing I do want to mention here, because some of you guys might say, well, what about some of your new products like featured news and business quotes? Aren't those content creation with HubShout? And the one thing that I wanted to state is that really the difference is that we're really working really hard on those to try to find ways to incorporate your clients' facts and figures or expert opinions more in an editorial fashion. So it's not so much that the promoting of that content it's a different thing than when you're writing information and then using content discovery to get someone back to your website. Okay, so Adam, that's what we have for native advertising. Are there any questions? Because I wanted to roll into one other feature update that we have on the system.
The chat boards are very quiet. We must have stunned them with your awesomeness. But I do know this is going. I mean, for some people, this is a brand new topic. You know, when we were at our national conferences at the Burrell and PIA Kelsey, this is the buzz among the very, very large publishers. You know, the Chicago Tribunes and the people who own radio stations and TVs. But when we were at the local conferences, talking to more local newspapers and whatnot, they haven't really gotten into this yet. So I think you're on a very cutting-edge topic here, Chad, and I think it's going to evolve. But I think it's pretty fascinating because we're kind of seeing the merger of content marketing with advertising, and you know, yet the lines are bleeding again. So you know, I think this is going to pick up traction, no doubt, this year and into 2015. But no questions on the chat.
Excellent. And I think another point there, Adam, before we transition over to our SEO goals and some software updates. So for those of you who are want to tune back in, we're going to be talking about that for a second here. But one final point on that, Adam, is that this is just yet another arrow in your quiver when you're out talking to somebody. And if as you're talking to them and you're talking about content marketing, and they're like, yeah, but I just don't. What's the value of this? How does it all fit together? This is another arrow in your quiver where you can talk about, I can promote this content, and it's a different way. And many small businesses have a hard time getting their head around, well, why would I want to sort of promote this content? Because I really just want someone who's looking for a plumber or an accountant today. I don't want to just get someone who's earlier in the decision process. But I think we all know, and we have to continue to hone our pitches, that we do have to sort of cast a wider net and get earlier in the funnel. And this is one way to do it that I think is going to only continue to evolve. And one other final point on this is that content discovery and native advertising is especially important on mobile because you have far less screen space. So if you think about the typical mobile experience, you're tabbing down or swiping through a very, very long page, and you arrive at the bottom. And really, that's where people are seeing the huge opportunity with this native advertising, is that, and especially with content discovery, is that at the bottom of that screen, when you're done reading that article, having some relevant information right there is super key to mobile. So I think as we continue to see the amount of time and the amount of content read on a mobile device grow, this stuff will become even more important. Okay, so let's jump over to
Hold on, before you jump out, I did get a couple comments. I guess your closing remarks inspired people, but one person said, I'm very excited to see a new feature and how HubShot will be trying to incorporate this into the content marketing and trying to explore native formats. Good stuff, guys. Keep it up. Appreciate the comment. Thank you. Someone else cited a study at Forbes saying that this type of content marketing will be bigger than ever in 2014. And as you were talking, Chad, I was also thinking, we've been talking a lot about what Google's been doing, their fear, uncertainty, and doubt campaign to scare folks, and they've been kind of on their PR warpath to say link building is a dirty word. You have to really earn your links, and this stuff fits right into that. As you drive towards higher quality content, and you naturally think about how can I get it out there, how can I prime the pump so people find it, so I can really truly earn the links. This stuff fits right in. So I see a big future for folks on the SEO side who haven't quite turned that corner, but are dealing with penalties and starting to shed some of the tactics they might have used 2 or 3 years ago. They will start to consider this as yet another merger of SEO, PR, content marketing. It is all coming together. So I think it's fascinating stuff.
Good point, Adam. Okay, well, let's switch gears. One fun thing here with some software updates. What I have here is an early look at our SEO goals screen. And a couple notes on this. So this is the phase 1. We've taken a little bit more of an iterative, agile development approach on this, where we're trying to take little bite-sized pieces that we can roll out over the next few months, sort of building towards a total SEO goal. So the first step that we realized is that it was difficult to get a consolidated view of how all of your campaigns are doing against some of the metrics that we're collecting. And today, the way you're getting that is that we've been creating a monthly account review spreadsheet, and you get phone calls from us, and we all sit down together and we go through it. But we knew that once we had locked down some of those metrics, we really wanted to get those into the dashboard, and this is the first step towards that. So when you guys log in as a reseller and you click on the admin tab, which really for all intents and purposes is your reseller account center, okay, because that's where you go to get all of your campaign details, account information. You do a lot of setup of campaigns and contracting. So that's all in the admin tab. We named it admin because if you were ever demoing the software, we didn't want it to say reseller or something that sort of didn't look right. So when you click on the admin tab, you're immediately going to see this SEO scorecard, and it will be all of your active SEO campaigns, paid search, social media. Those again we'll get to as we walk through this process. But the initial launch will be all of your active SEO campaigns, and you'll see these 4 metrics. You're going to see a monthly plot of your organic visits pulled in from Google Analytics, and then you'll see a comparison of the last full month and the month afterwards. So we're sitting here in May. You would be seeing the green number in this particular graph will be comparing March and April. Okay, and then when May completes, it'll look at the complete month of May, the complete month of April. So you're seeing a traffic change graph there. The next chart over says rankings, and that's the total number of Bing and Google rankings that we're tracking that have a ranking. Okay, so I think on Google that goes from it's somewhere between position 1 and 110, and Adam, actually on Bing it's a little bigger than that, right? Or it's a little smaller. I can't remember.
Sorry, I didn't know that was a question. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't know. I don't want to put that. I'll look it up.
We'll have to look it up. But basically, it's any position it's any Bing ranking as well. So it's the total of those two, and again, the number there to the right is comparing, in this case, the May to the April, because we know in May how many rankings you have. So it's looking at May compared to April, and the top line is saying that in May there are 13 more rankings. It doesn't say whether on page 1 or not, but 13 more rankings across the board than you had in April. And then the next column over is showing how many page 1 rankings you have. So in this particular case, there were 13 more rankings, and there were 4 more position 1 rankings for this particular client. And then on the right-hand side, if you're using our lead or phone tracking, this is a total of your web leads and your phone calls. And again, it's comparing the last full month to the last full month before that. So in this case, it would be comparing April to March. So you get you get a scorecard here, and you would see all those metrics. And the idea is that we want to get on the phone call with you on a monthly basis, and you can look at this data whenever you want. But we want to get on a phone call on a monthly basis, and we want to be able to identify where are their hot spots, what's going well, what's not going well, and be able to address that. So this is phase 1. We haven't gotten to actually showing some of the value of customer and the conversion rates that we've been collecting in our SOW calls and our monthly review calls, but this is some of those core metrics up front that we have been starting to track also in the campaign details under the goals section for leads, visits, page 1 rankings, etc. Any questions on this?
Nothing so far, Chad. Looks good.
Great. So our plan is we're doing some QA testing. Want to make sure that we've put all the data out and that it looks right. So we're doing QA testing. We've been making a few adjustments here and there, but our plan is to roll this out next week. And when it rolls out, we'll notify you through our typical channel, which is we'll make an announcement in the system notes part of the forum. And then, again, this will have no in-client impact at launch because it will just be something you see under the admin area. But when you log in and click on admin, it will show you this. And we also hope this will help a little bit from a navigation standpoint because I blurred them out for privacy purposes, confidentiality purposes. But on the left-hand side, this would also be a link to the campaign details. So if you can't quite remember what campaigns do I have active, they would all be right there on the left for all of your SEO campaigns, and you can click right through and get the campaign details. So we hope that it'll be also be a little bit of a navigation enhancement to make it easier to get to your accounts. That's all we have for today. So we appreciate your time today, and we look forward to talking to you in the forum or on the next webinar.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Take care.